All right, good evening. I want to welcome everyone to our Wake County Public School System Board of Education meeting. It is Tuesday, March 16th, calling this meeting to order at 5:39 p.m. We are here in the boardroom at our Crossroads One office. We have all board members here present physically, along with Superintendent Moore, and we are welcome to we are glad to welcome our guests and community members this evening. Welcome. It's good to see other faces other than our normal cohort of folks here, so welcome to you all. Good evening. We are opening back up to some extent as the governor's orders allow us to have now 25 in terms of folks gathered in the room at one time, so we're welcome to have them as well as some media here this evening as well. So just want to say welcome back to everyone and good evening. We do have a quorum, again, with all board members present, so if you would stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So thank you for that, and we will get right into it. Start with our information comment section. So Superintendent Moore, we'll start with you. Good evening to you, and welcome as well.
Good evening, Chair Sutton and board members. Congratulations to Krista Brinchek of Abbotts Creek Elementary School, who is one of 4 teachers in North Carolina this year to receive the Career Award for Science and Mathematics Teachers given by the borough's Welcome Fund. The annual award recognizes outstanding STEM teachers in North Carolina schools. Ms. Brinchek received the award on the strength of her project, Go Outside and Learn, using nature connections to reduce inequalities and build sustainable communities. She has developed the innovative Green STEM program at Abbotts Creek Elementary, where each grade level is responsible for a different citizen science project. She also frequently brings local STEM professionals into the classroom, knowing that students are more likely to pursue STEM careers if they are introduced to successful scientists and engineers. The award comes with $175,000 over 5 years to help further Ms. Brinchek's work, providing funding for professional development and supplies. Ms. Brinchek, who was an environmental geologist before becoming a teacher, combines environmental science, citizen science projects, and community service to make learning meaningful and relevant for students. Our strategic plan core beliefs hold that this is exactly the kind of teaching that our students need to be successful. My thanks to Ms. Brinchek for the knowledge, energy, and passion she brings to her work. Speaking of effective teachers, it was announced last week that our district, for the 15th consecutive year, has the highest number of National Board certified teachers in the nation. More than 3,000 teachers have achieved this milestone while working for WCPSS. This year, 98 teachers earned National Board certification from the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. In addition, 79 teachers who had already received their National Board certification earned renewal of their certifications. Seeking National Board certification is a rigorous process that requires teachers to analyze their teaching practices, to take on leadership roles, and to collaborate with their peers. This takes a significant commitment of time outside of the teacher's regular classroom responsibilities. As a district, we strive to make sure teachers who want to pursue board certification have adequate time and support to do so, because we know that higher standards for teachers means better learning for students. Congratulations to all our teachers who have worked so hard to achieve and maintain board certification. Finally, my thanks to everyone who supported this year's Wake Up and Read book drive. Nearly 115,000 books were collected during the 8th annual event. While that was short of the ambitious goal of 200,000 books, Wake Up and Read collected more new books and raised more money this year than during any previous drive. More than 200 collection partners, including businesses, civic groups, and schools, supported the drive, and 135 financial contributions were made for a total of $16,500. The books will be distributed to 13 Wake County partner schools and 17 child care centers. Just because this year's book drive is officially over doesn't mean it's too late to make your donation and help Wake Up and Read hit their goal of collecting 200,000 books. You can take donations on Wednesdays and Fridays to Wake Up and Read's new headquarters at 1820 Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh, the old Bobby Murray site. You can also make a financial contribution at any time. Visit wakeupandread.org to learn more about how you can support literacy in our community. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. And I'll be quite brief with mine. I touched on mine at the end of the work session. But I think this period really sort of is, brings us about at a reflective time. I can remember, and I'm sure many of you recall, it was March 3rd that the first positive COVID case was found here in Wake County. 10 days later, on March 13th, which we celebrate the anniversary, not celebrate it, but the anniversary this Saturday, when we made the decision to close schools here and across North Carolina, and it's been a year. And so I think it is fitting that we're back here on today, March 16th, that we are having this conversation and discussion about returning to face-to-face instruction for our middle school and high school students. So it is also, again, good to see signs that we are opening back up, not just in our high schools, but here at central office, here in our board meetings, and we hope that that trend continues as we continue to see the data and the health trends move in what is a positive direction in terms of fewer cases, fewer spread, fewer hospitalizations. And so it is certainly important to see that. And last but not least, if we continue on that trend, that positive trend, that still means adhering to the all-important 3 W's of waiting, the appropriate social distance, washing our hands, and wearing masks. So we must continue to do that. And of course, that is all supported by the increased number and availability of vaccinations. So I encourage all who can, whose group is now up and available, to please get your vaccinations. Whether you are parent, frontline worker, what have you, if the opportunity is there, as they say, then get your shot, take your shot. Please do so, so that we don't see these trends regress and move back in a positive direction. And we can continue to do what it is that we do here in Wake County, and that is educate students, educate our youth, and continue to impact communities and families. So with that, I will turn it over to Vice Chair Mahaffey for any comments, and we'll move then to other board members.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Certainly have come a long way since the 13th of March 2020. And I just want to thank all of our teachers, students, school staff, district staff, and our families and greater community for the continued support throughout this difficult year. It has not been easy. This has been the year of no easy choices. It continues to be that year. But again, we're moving forward in what we feel is a positive direction, but again, with some hesitancy, knowing it can be taken away very quickly. I'd like to thank our schools for opening themselves up for some visits. I know it's the highlight of my week when I get to go inside a building and see what is going on, the brilliance of our students, the brilliance of our teachers, and how they are adapting to our current situation when it comes to education, whether it's high school, middle school, or elementary. Many of us had the pleasure of attending the Young Women's Leadership Conference. It's being held over 3 Saturdays instead of 1 day, and it is just a very powerful, uplifting moment for many of the young women in our community, for girls ages grade 7 and up. And I think my favorite part is that it's student-led and student-driven, so facilitated by adults, but making sure that the students are the ones sharing their voice and hearing how many of our young women have come back to this conference year after year and wanting to make this happen in the virtual space. Again, thank you to our partners who are helping our vaccine clinics happen, for our Wake County employees, and all of the folks who have volunteered, be they pharmacists or folks working within the district in order to help facilitate that. And today, in a little bit of normalcy, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Carter, and I were able to work with the Cary Chamber of Commerce and speak to their leadership Cary group. They had Education Day, so they heard from members of the Board of Education and other people in the education sphere from pre-K all the way up to the college community, about what's being done for our students today to prepare them for the jobs and the workforce of tomorrow. So thank you always to the Cary Chamber of Commerce for supporting our students and our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Chairman Sutton. A lot of folks to thank since our last meeting. First of all, I want to say that we had a very successful Board Advisory Council meeting for District 7. We had over 95 in attendance, staff, families, concerned citizens. And it would not have been possible without the very excellent work of Ms. Marlo Gaddis, Drew Cook and his team, and Paul Coe and his team. And we went 40 minutes overtime, working hard to answer every question that was had, following up with everybody individually if requested. And I just can't say enough of the efforts and the work that everybody on our staff put into that meeting. I think it was a real chance to connect with folks in the community, talk about these issues. It was important for people in our community to be heard, but also to know that they've been heard and hear that feedback from staff and hear everything that staff is working on that sometimes gets left out of, some of the reports of the work that we're doing. So I've extended to the superintendent just my thanks to that team, but I wanted everyone here to hear my thanks to them as well. Also thanks to some of the schools that I visited. Pleasant Grove Elementary, Principal Batten and AP Jilks hosted us on a wonderful visit, talking with them about the progress and the great work they've made at their school. Leesville Road High School and Principal Ian Solomon has also hosted us. And we've gotten a chance, like I think a lot of us have, to go inside and really see what's going on and what the experience of the staff and the students has been on a daily basis. And I welcome more of those opportunities. As Ms. Mahaffey said, thanks to Carrie Price and the Cary Chamber and their Leadership Cary program. I thought, and Ms. Mahaffey had commented on it a bit, but Ms. Carter too, I'd be curious on your thoughts. One of the opportunities that we get by going to functions like this was not just explaining what we're doing, but also to maybe advocate a little more and help people understand local school financing, where our resources come from. And I thought it was particularly important the call all of us made for increasing the number of counselors in our school and the importance and how many issues that ties into. Again, just a special thanks to all of the students, staff, and parents I've been speaking to since our last meeting and their feedback. Special thanks to all of our volunteers that are working at the vaccination clinics, including several people around this table. I know you all won't take credit for your good work, but I want you all to know that it's very much appreciated by everybody in our community. Thanks to our county and our state leaders and our goal of overall providing a vaccine shot to everyone who wants it. And Mr. Chair, I'll add to your call for vaccinations. We have a number of students that are age appropriate to receive the vaccine, many of whom have frontline jobs and are putting themselves in a position, whether they're working in a restaurant, where they're working in a gas station, where they're working in some other commercial environment, where if they are interested in a shot at this time to protect themselves, they can go and get that. And I hope we'll continue to provide information about that as well. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. And yes, I would agree, Mr. Haggerty and Ms. Mahaffey. Today was a nice meeting. I'm looking forward to more, actually, hoping we get invited to some more. It was a great conversation. I want to start off actually about my Board Advisory Council meeting as well, and wanted to thank Mr. Winters and Ms. Kimsey. They did a great job, similar to what information we received today in the Budget Finance Committee, really going over the CARES funding in detail, because a lot of parents and even some staff don't quite understand how that money has been spent, so it was helpful for them to be able to have that breakdown, and looking forward as to how some of that might be spent as well, and actually went over some of our budgeting considerations as we're moving into that season. And Ms. Gaddis again, big thank you. But I also want to thank Mr. Huffstetler and Ms. Mills again for providing translation and the interpretation, because without their assistance, those families, several families would not be able to participate. So cannot thank you enough for that. And I've been visiting schools as well, really appreciated the willingness to fit me in with everything going on. Visited Green Hope Elementary and High, Reedy Creek Elementary, Laurel Park Elementary, and Farmington Woods, and have a few tomorrow. And it was great seeing this week the 4th and 5th graders, some of the classes, and their excitement over being all together, and how they're making the adjustments in the classroom and specials and all of that. So really great to see that firsthand. And just a reminder for those in District 9, this Sunday at 4, I will be having another D9 connection meeting. If anyone is wants to hop on and provide some feedback, I'm there to listen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Kushner.
Thank you. And I'm also continuing with my colleagues to visit schools and getting a great deal out of being hosted by our gracious leadership and seeing what's going on in the schools as we make this transition, because it certainly has been a year unlike any other. It bears repeating, and I'm grateful to every teacher, educator, staff member, and our students for their resilience and their dedication during this year. We appreciate you and show great gratitude. And I also wanted to add congratulations to those teachers who are committed to their craft of teaching and went through the National Board Certification. It is truly a gold standard, and Wake County leads the nation in this exceptional professionalism, and I value that for all of our teachers and for the teachers who get mentored and work with the teachers who go through the certification process. So thank you and kudos to them.
Thank you, Ms. Kushner. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. As I try to every board meeting, I want to begin by thanking our staff for the incredible work that you're doing in all of our schools. Thank you to families, to students, and to the community. Particularly to educators. You know, when we hear a lot of language which gets thrown around quite frequently now about how we need to open schools, I just want to acknowledge that as educators, we've had schools open basically ever since the pandemic began. It took a while to try to figure out how to do it in a remote fashion. It was not done as well initially, but every educator I know has been working tirelessly, and school has been open. There are issues about in person or not, but let's please everybody be careful about your language, because when you hear that schools haven't been open and you're an educator, then you're asking, why am I so tired? Somewhat related to that, you know, we've heard a lot of heartstrings, particularly from legislators and the governor, about how we support, how the underprivileged children need all this support, and how you know, the social and emotional aspects of being in school isn't critical. None of us want to disagree with that. I want to just say that I hope we see that in the budget, because it's disingenuous to just say that we care for underprivileged children and we need social and emotional support when we're trying to get school buildings open. We need people in those buildings. We need nurses. We need social workers. We need psychologists. We need instructional assistants. Read Leandro, read just about anything. I want to see it in the budget. And then I'll know that it's not just a political game, but that you actually care. Every week I try to always provide an update on data because I think that's important. The most recent data released by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, when normalized for census data, so we can actually get the cases per population, has Wake County at 101 cases per 100,000 population. If you look at the 5 to 17-year-olds, those are the cohorts of our school-age population. They too are at 101 cases per 100,000 population. So the school-age population is exactly the same as the average county, even though a lot of the lore says that it's less among the students. That's just not correct. This past week, we did see in Wake County the numbers, the cases per 100,000 population drop a little bit for the 5 to 9-year-olds. They actually dropped by a third based on the numbers reported. That will probably go up a little bit in the following week. But at the same time, the number of elementary school cases reported on the Wake County Public Schools dashboard was only one down from last week, and that was a 4-day week. So we saw a decrease in the Wake County numbers, but we saw a plateau in the Wake County Public Schools numbers. I think these are issues that we need to keep in mind as we make decisions going forward. I, too, want to thank the schools that hosted visits, as well as the leadership who helped make that happen. It was great to have conversations and walk around schools. A few things I learned. Under-enrolled schools have an advantage this year that has not been the case in the past. Under-enrolled schools have been able to have places to store extra furniture. They've been able to better make use of their classrooms. That said, what I also heard from under-enrolled schools is that they're crying for planning for next year because under-enrolled schools are potentially some of the most vulnerable. One of the specific things I heard with respect to the multi-track year-round, right, this is an issue that we as a board have talked about for quite some time. Do all of the multi-track year-round schools provide us the cost value that we say? And we recognize that's not particularly the case all the time. Now, these schools are still very much committed to the year-round calendar, but are requesting that plans be made now to be able to stay on a single-track calendar for the upcoming year. So I guess the request is that we look at all of our multi-track year-round schools. Those who need the capacity, then potentially we need to, as we've talked about before, develop a pretty clear set of criteria for when we use the multi-track and when we don't. But these schools were asking for a decision early because, with the multi-track year-round calendar normally starting in July, principals need to be planning schedules right now. So we need to get that plan out early. And like I say, from multiple schools, a request was, please take a look at it. Can some of them stay on the single track across the board? My multi-track year-round school principals said they did not realize the difference it makes by having all the staff on the same cohort. They function more as a school. There's been better planning among PLTs, and without exception, each of those principals said that they actually believe that they're doing better instruction this year than they have any other year. So staying on that cohort has a lot of advantages. They're requesting that that decision be made as soon as possible. The other thing I noticed looking at classrooms is I think we all, when we see the high school classrooms with just a couple kids in them, that does not look like an effective classroom. I have a couple of classrooms where it was a regular full classroom with the nearly 30 students in a classroom. And then I saw other classrooms that had that reasonable social distance. And the thing that impressed me is I had forgotten how bad 30 kids in a classroom really looks from an educational perspective. When you can lower it so that you have the appropriate social distance and you have the 20 or so children in a classroom, you actually see that you've got a decent teacher-to-student ratio. You've actually got place for learning instead of having everybody crammed in. So we've talked about this before. We know we're under-resourced in terms of our staffing. But in terms of the social distancing numbers, I know people are trying to get as many people in as possible, but we need to stop and think about actual education. And what impressed me is that the smaller class sizes are actually what we should be working for if we actually care about education. I saw principals doing the best that they can do. Lots of teachers doing the best that they can do, expressing, the work was incredible. Like I noted in the work session, even when you go back in person, because of quarantine issues, because of health issues, every teacher is teaching hybrid. The challenge of teaching hybrid, I know, I've done it, is immense. And we've provided our teachers, for the most part, a laptop. And trying to teach hybrid from a laptop is pretty challenging. What I did see is the teachers who were able to do this most effectively were teachers who actually had experience with podcasts and other group projects ahead of time. Teachers who had, a microphone that actually, captures the sound of the whole room. Teachers who had multiple laptops, who had additional monitors. This is what makes it effective. But again, what I saw is hats off to teachers. We're expecting you to do an awful lot with just a laptop. So we need to really look at that infrastructure that we're providing teachers to allow education to be effective. The other thing that I very clearly heard talking with teachers is that they were impressed with substantial learning taking place among their students. In fact, I heard a kindergarten teacher tell me that, in fact, she's seen some kindergartners learning to read more effectively from the virtual format than had in the in-person. That is not to say that we don't need in-person. What it is to say is that there has been a lot of very effective learning happening. And what I heard, most of all, is that where there is engagement, whatever format, in-person or virtual, there is great learning. Where there is what everybody is calling loss is where there is disengagement. And when you look at the overall numbers, right, we've talked about this every time we talk about disaggregating numbers. If you look at an overall average, is it good? Is it bad? It's hard to say. We need to look at the specifics. And the issue is, from what the teachers were showing to me, is not so much in-person or virtual, it's engagement or not engagement. So herein lies the challenge. How do we increase engagement? This is where we need our social workers, counselors, etc. What I learned is our counselors are spending as much time tracking down attendance and COVID tracing as they are actually doing the work of counselors. Again, we're understaffed. So if we want to do what we say we want to do, legislature, governor, county commissioners, let's see it in the budget. Let's have that support personnel so that we can actually carry out the education that our staff is trying so hard to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Sutton, and good evening to everyone. I want to add to what Dr. Martin said. Our educators certainly have been through so much. Our families have been through so much this past year. I've shared this before, but I'm a former music teacher, and I keep in touch with some of the people. I started my freshman year with the Introduction to Music Education class at Indiana University, and I still keep in touch with a lot of them. And a lot of them were going through the pain, sharing that on their social media accounts of what it's been like. And it's hit everyone hard, but I think our fine arts teachers, my goodness, the impact it's had on them. And I think it's important to remember that the effects of COVID that our teachers are feeling are the personal ones too, where they may be the first line of defense for an elderly parent or an immune compromised spouse. We have teachers right now who are living in separate rooms because they're being extra cautious because of their their loved one. So it's hard. I mean, and many of them are parents as well, and processing the same grief that we're all processing in seeing our children have to navigate the pandemic along with us. Our job as parents is to guard our children and protect them from horrible things, and we can't, because it's still here. And I appreciate very much the passion from parents who are advocating for their children and for other children. And I certainly appreciate the passion that we hear from those who are saying they share that, and they just ask us to continue to provide them with safe plans and with safe protocols. I just want to acknowledge that. And then speaking of music, my apologies for not being more involved in my social media account, but the pandemic has taken a toll on me too. But I did share something about joining the band. So for those of you who have rising 6th grade students, it's time to sign up for electives. And I ask that you please consider checking off that box, consider looking at band. This is the time to start in your middle school. It is a phenomenal way. Our fine arts, from the very beginning, we have fantastic teachers who have been teaching students virtually in our magnet schools and in our middle schools, and all of our schools, but been teaching beginning music students, band students, chorus students virtually, theater. So please consider that. During one of my school visits, I was at Heritage High School and saw what their band director was doing to monitor the different cameras so they can see the conductor up close, and so the conductor can see the individual students, and they have all these different screens, and they're making it work. But it is not the same. So I ask that if there are students who are in here, just please keep that patience. It's not the same playing an instrument in your bedroom by yourself than it is with your peers, and that's really hard. It's really hard for me to hear that one of my kiddos might not understand keeping a steady tempo because they're not playing along with their peers. But please consider it. Our fine arts have been doing an amazing job, and thank you to Father Lee Heath for everything that he's been doing to also keep the spirits of our teachers, our fine arts teachers, lifted as much as possible. The last thing I want to say is, Miss Cash, there was a football game, and Roseville High School might have played Wakefield, but Roseville High School is doing really well, and it's exciting because the transitions that the high school has made, but their next games are all other District 1 high schools, so I'm not going to say anything. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Ms. Johnson-Osler.
Thank you indeed, and I will certainly be a champion for our fine arts. Having a child tumbling upstairs in my house feels like there's somebody going to come crashing down when she's dancing upstairs. But I also, my heart goes out to parents who are listening to their first-time music students for the very first time at home. So hats off to them too. But certainly agree as a huge fan of the fine arts, which is not one of my high schools, but one of my dear favorite teachers, but watching the creativity and the support Freddie Lee Heath has given our fine arts. I mean, we all know Rawdon is aesthetically beautiful, but the way that they were able to deliver their outside dance performance was, and I was not there, I was watching it live stream, was stunning, and it speaks to just the creativity and love that our teachers have for their students, and their students vice versa for their teachers. So not my high school, but of course you all know I love dance because I have a dancer, but it was beautiful. It was very beautiful. The backdrop, I mean, I'm amazed at what our folks are able to do. So hats off to everybody who have been making all of those productions happen, especially while, like my colleagues visiting schools, watching people get ready for plays, and some of them will have to be online and some of them won't. You know, we spend so much of our time at the board table when we're making decisions talking about our academic course load, but I do agree it's important to note that all of our folks in our buildings are doing a fabulous job, and a reminder that a couple of teachers I know in fine arts also got board certified. So again, always hats off to Wake County and the support, the mentorship, but also the supportive guidance that we continue to provide in cohort model for teachers who are working on their national boards. And that still takes a yeoman of work for the people who work here in central services that facilitate supporting our teachers. So thanks to everyone who makes it possible. It just goes to prove everything that we do takes the entire village, and hats off to all the folks who provide those support. Thanks to all of my administrators in my district who facilitated my in-person visits and my online visits, which I have to tell you all the funniest thing. I got added to a teacher's classroom, so I see every Google Meet, and I was like, I think I gotta. It just dawned on me today that I need to email and be like, hey, I don't think you want to invite me to second grade every day, but it's a little fun because I get to see what I don't open the link, but I can see the topic of the day. So again, just those little tiny reminders of the technology glitches that we don't think about. So now I'm officially in a second grade class that I adore watching their topics. And again, the creativity, of course, continues to blow me away. But again, thank you to the parents and students and community members and stakeholders who have continued to email us as they heard us at the work session, and especially those who have provided feedback and suggestions and asking questions that I would not have thought about myself. So like mask, I have not read the instructions to cloth mask. Apparently you're not supposed to use them more than 20 times, but I usually wear disposable masks. I have a colleague who knows how much I love disposable masks. Designer, that is, with colors. So I bring that up because I learned something new just by Mark Witter's discussion about how many masks we ordered. So again, that just shows the level of engagement we have at every level of our district. And regardless of the decisions we make, I still continue to echo Superintendent Moore's earlier comments that we have been slow, methodical, careful, and intentional. And regardless of how tough the conversations are, I hope people hear the very intentional way that our leadership at our district level continues to bring things to us and, take the punches when we ask the questions, recognizing that this is really about building a cohesive, better district with answering the questions. So again, thank everyone who, as you said, the tons of people, Ms. Moore, who are behind the screens and scenes making this happen. Again, I always like to end with thanking you for the work that you do in our district.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Last but not least, Mrs. Cash.
Thank you. First of all, my area superintendents have been dynamite. I asked if I could visit all my schools and how could they help me, and oh my gosh, I've got a meeting at every school, and I cannot thank them enough. They have made it easy as can be. So this last week I did get to go to a couple of the elementary schools and one of the middle schools, and one of the elementary schools had a outdoor music teacher doing recorders, which I hadn't done in a while. Yeah, I'm going to get one of those recorders and see if I can relive my clarinet days, but I have to start with a recorder, I was told. So it's been really, really good. And I really know this week has been really exciting and hard for our elementary principals and opening up the doors to all of their grades K-5, and I appreciate these principals and teachers for doing that, and for everybody in our staff and central office that's made it possible. And two of the principals sent me videos of their first day shenanigans that they did in their schools, so they really put it all out there. The red carpet was out there for everybody and seemed very excited about having K-5 back in full-time, so I'm excited about that. Sorry about the football game. However, I do want to again mention, I just briefly mentioned about the Mill, and you gave me, so I could say it again, Chair Sutton, that the Millbrook High School boys varsity basketball team is state championship led by Coach Davis. And one of the things that Coach Davis takes great pride in is that he knows that his athletes have to wear their mask at all times, even in the school and out of the school, because he almost got in a little bit of trouble when the athletes the spiking started happening. I told him that this could all go away real quickly. So he said that he made his athletes understand that this was a privilege to play on his team and not that they had to be responsible in the public as well. So I appreciate that. wanted to just say on that note as a final is that I do think as we begin to open our schools and we look at our 6 through 12, that as a healthcare provider, I'm a big believer of the mask and I'm a big believer of the vaccine. And I feel that it's going to be really important for our parents and our families to instill into their students, their middle school students and their high school students, that if they're out in the public, they need to be wearing their mask, even when they're with their peers. I think it's important that they do that because, and I think it's up to the parents and all of us that are around these kids on a regular basis to instill in them, whether we believe it or not, that this is going to be a way we can keep our schools open. So please, everyone out there, tell your older students that their mask will be helpful even in the community. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Cash, for that. Winning a state championship, I'm sure any athlete and coach at the high school level can tell you it's no easy feat to win a state championship, and to be able to do that during a pandemic and under these conditions makes that just even more challenging. So hats off to the Millbrook varsity boys team, the entire coaching staff, the school for supporting them, their principal, and all the fans and parents that made that possible. So thank you and congratulations to you all in that regard. And I will say too that regardless of the decisions that we make and that you all make, we all care about students and their safe return and operational sound return to school. So thank you all of you for your tireless work and the difficult decisions that you have before you and that will be coming before you as we move forward. Moving on to our agenda, we had a item on the Finance Committee agenda that was a review of the 2021-22 proposed budget. We did not get to that in finance, so that will be part of our information. Will be part of an information item. So we will hear that presentation from staff during the information item of the agenda. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion, we approve tonight's meeting agenda as amended.
I second.
Got a motion from Mrs. Mahaffey, second from Mrs. Cash to approve tonight's meeting agenda as amended, and that is now posted in Assembly. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, show by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Tonight's meeting agenda is approved as amended. Next, moving to public comment. Residents wishing to address Wake County Board of Education may submit their comments or video by noon the day of the meeting. That link can be found at our website, which is www.wcpss.net. We have removed some of the capacity restrictions. They are still in place, but just moved in terms of a limited attendance, and in-person comment is now allowed, again, at a limited capacity. The guidelines for in-person attendance and public comment can be found at the portion of the district's website designated for school board business, which is found under the tab About Us, again, at our website. Any member of the public who is unable or does not wish to attend in person may provide comments in writing or by posting a video using the instructions on our site. Speakers are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, however, speakers are encouraged to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. Concerns related to personnel issues may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Speakers, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern, but should refrain from discussing confidential student information. Concerns related to confidential student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS, again, personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. The following citizens have submitted comments as part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. Their comments are linked on the same online agenda we are using for tonight's meeting. That agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future meetings, can be found at the school district's website, again, www.wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 26 written comments from members of the public. The topics and speakers whose comments are as follows. We have 18 speakers who wish to speak on or have submitted public comments around in-person instruction. And then there are 8 other speakers on a variety of topics, which include Fall Virtual Academy, another on Virtual Academy, school zoning, MVP, teachers return to campus, math concerns, off-campus lunch, and WCPSS is Mom on outreach to advocates regarding the SRO program. So those are the written public comments for this evening. And tonight we have with us 6 speakers to provide in-person public comment for tonight. As we get started, for those speakers, again, good evening to you all. Welcome. You may come to the microphone and our makeshift podium, if you will. You have the indicator lights that will let you know the time, and there is also hand wipes and sanitizer there for your use to wipe your hands, wipe the podium or the table and the microphone as you need it and see fit. So thank you again for being here. Again, good to see you all. And we'll start with Susan Rhodes.
Hello, Mrs. Moore, Chair Sutton, school board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for the countless hours you have spent debating, planning, and preparing for our students in Wake County. I've been a teacher and a counselor in Wake County schools for 28 years, and over those years I have fought for equitable education, access to services, and a nurturing environment for thousands of students whose path to a bright future is contingent upon a well-rounded education. But tonight I stand in front of you to advocate for the most important of those to me personally, my son, who is an 11th grader at Fuquay-Varina High School. First of all, let me say Fuquay is a wonderful school, and I have 2 proud graduates of that school already. If given any opportunity to pick a high school, Fuquay is my pick, hands down. All 3 of my sons have benefited from a high-quality education and top-notch arts programs, competitive sports, and a safe, inclusive environment with a small-town atmosphere. A huge part of the success at Fuquay and all other effective schools is the relationship built between students and the staff. This pandemic has forced us all to do school differently, but as noted by Ms. Moore in an email she sent today, there's a growing consensus among the health officials that the negative effects on our children when they are not in school every day outweigh the diminishing health risk of COVID. The research-backed evidence comes to the same consensus. Our middle and high school students are suffering mentally, emotionally, and socially. Sure, teachers can disseminate information online, but this is not about content being taught. It's about the natural desire in every human for genuine interaction and community. It's about meaningful interactions when discussing the complexities of American history. It's about demonstrations in chemistry and explanations about algebraic equations. It's about learning from the questions that a shy student may be afraid to ask, but thankfully their peer did, so they both benefit. It's about learning to respectfully disagree and debate and present your case in literature and language classes. Our teenagers need to engage with others like them and those who are different in this world, so where our political polarity is magnified in the media, we can find similarities, exhibit compassion for others, develop empathy, and grow together from our common experiences. In recent years, our Student Services Department has been discussing the devastating implications for children who have experienced adverse childhood experiences. Long-term negative and mental and physical health outcomes in people who have had multiple adverse events in childhood have been well documented. But the good news is that research also shows that having one or more caring adult in a child's life increases the likelihood that they will flourish and become productive adults. In many, many cases, that adult is the counselor, the cafeteria worker, the school bus driver, the teacher, or the coach who listened to them, spent time with them, looked them in the eyes, and welcomed them into school in person daily. Not someone who talked to them through a Chromebook, but someone who was physically and emotionally there. So tonight, I stand before you to implore you to allow our high school and middle school students to return to full-time school. I ask that you also allow and encourage our administrators there to use creative solutions to restructure classes and human resources so that the staff can teach all students who desire to return in person. I ask that administrators
Ms. Rose,
assure
the
that
time is up.
teachers talk to students, look them in the eye, and interact with them, listen to them, and care about them, because the repercussions are too great if we put it off any longer.
Ms. Rose,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Bly. Good evening, sir.
Found it ironic on my way in listening to the work session and also in here a lot of the talk about how data needs to be looked at so critically when we've spent 2 years asking for the MVP survey and other data on MVP math to be looked at just as critically. I also found it ironic about how we talked about student voices needing to be heard when we have also spent 2 years coming in here and asking for the student voices, not just the 5 or 6 that are doing well and want more structure, but all of the voices to be heard on how they're doing in the math program. Since none of the kids, students in our circle that we talk to, have been asked their opinion, I'm here to be the voice of one of them, who also happens to be one of the, I guess, between 14 and 18,000 students within IEP or 504. That would be my daughter, who last night, when we were going through her math, I realized she had not done her math test yet. She hadn't done her math test because she didn't know how to do it. Furthermore, she couldn't figure out where to go to learn how to do it. And being autistic, that gave her anxiety because she doesn't want to turn in answers that are wrong. So she just didn't do it. So I sat down with her. I tried it your way. I said, I'm not going to do this for you. We're going to find the answers. We spent 40 minutes looking at past classwork on Google Classwork, looking at any teacher's notes we could find, trying to find videos, everything that we've been told we're supposed to do. And in the end, she still didn't know how to do it. So I said, in my mind, how about she just fails the questions so we have something to take to her teacher next time and say, look, she's not doing well. So I said, baby, just go ahead, do it your way. And I left for a little bit, and I came back. And when I came back, she'd answered all the questions correctly. I said, how did you get all these? And after a lot of coaxing, I found out she used her fractions calculator on her phone because she did not want to put in the wrong answer because that gives her anxiety. I get everything we're trying to do with all this. I get that the journey is not as important, or is more important than the answer. I get all the stuff that you guys are telling me. But I'm trying to tell you that there's a significant group of children who are not fitting into your box with how you want to teach this. And you are not providing an adequate way for those who don't learn the way you want them to actually learn the material. And I would like you to put as much passion into finding an answer for that as you do to the bell schedules today.
Thank you, Mr. Bly. Yasmin Aldemer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I will not waste time retelling a year's worth of decisions and planning this board and this system has reaped upon our children. It won't get us anywhere. I am here to speak on behalf of my children, one of which is a freshman and the other is a 7th grader with an IEP. I will not be speaking on behalf of my autistic child with severe developmental delay. No. Tonight, I will speak on behalf of my freshman, my eldest son, the apple of my eye, the joy of my heart, the best son a mother can wish for, and the best big brother a special needs child can have. I stand before you because my son has witnessed for the past year his brother's distress and agony. From daily morning trips to the school, just so that I can prove to his brother that school is actually closed, I'm not preventing him, to 3 attempts of elopement, to getting to school on his own, finding him while we're on the phone with the police, just in case I couldn't find him and they can get there on time, and 2 attempts to go to school through our 3rd floor balcony before we had all the doors with deadbolts. My eldest son has seen all of that, and he saw how helpless his father and I have become. So he decided to be our rock. He put on a brave face. He showed sympathy. He helped in every little way he could. He decided to take care of us while we took care of his little brother. He was strong. He was compassionate, helpful, and understanding, and very, very patient. All the while, he himself was suffering. He has never been so lonely, never been so isolated, and never been any less engaged, any less motivated to work. But his father and I were not blind. We were tired and exhausted, but we were not blind to him. We tried everything with him to keep him engaged, at least with us. We checked on him unannounced throughout the day, just in case. I'm not here to yell about science. I'm not here to yell about constitutional rights. I'm here to tell you that the kids have had enough. They're ready. They need to get back. Education is a wholesome package. It's not about grades. It's not about numbers. It's about the children as whole humans. They have waited long enough. Please vote tonight. Don't delay anymore. That's enough. Don't delay anymore. Vote tonight. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alnummer. Carrie Bly.
Can I move this?
Sure.
Today, I'm not coming to this board meeting to ask you for better math resources for our children, because after 2 years of asking, you might be relieved to know that we have gotten the hint and we realize that help is not coming. And as the kids would say, we have picked up what you have put down. The next board speech to you will hopefully be our last. We came to this podium 2 years ago because a frustrated teacher told us to do so, and we didn't know that any of you existed before that. We came here because our kid was asking us some pretty fair questions, and the schools couldn't answer them. Our kids couldn't complete their homework. They were failing quizzes, failing tests, failing classes, retaking math courses entirely. And they understood, even at such a young age, that they were falling behind in other subjects because they had to spend so much extra time on math. They were stuck in study halls relearning math topics and neglecting other subjects. They didn't have anything to learn from, and they were lost and unorganized. This wasn't a positive environment for our neurotypical child, and we didn't predict this would be a positive environment for our younger child on the spectrum. And we wanted to show our children how to ask for help. So we brought those fair and valid questions to this podium, and we stood at this counter every 2 weeks just waiting for you to answer us, waiting for help, because it was that important to us, and because we knew that by the sheer law of human nature, when we were out of your sight, we were out of your mind. It was never a thought in our head that we would be standing here 2 years later no better off than the day we started. And the reality we have come to is the only kids that are going to a 4-year university exiting a Wake County public high school will be the ones that are naturally mathematically inclined, savants, or the ones that come from families that can afford the $400 a month per child for math tutoring. that they need to pass your 4 mandated math courses, because like it or not, no matter how bright a student is, and no matter how well they do in all their other subjects, universities do not accept students with D's in math on their transcript, and not even you can change that, so we concede. After our next board meeting in April, we will join the ranks of the thousands of families and battle for the spots for math tutors. But you didn't need Pete and I up here telling you these things. You can look around your community at the math tutoring companies setting up next to your grocery store. Count the number of ads online, look at social media. Because you don't see expensive brick and mortar science tutoring centers or reading tutoring centers or history, it's just math. And that's an observation worth sitting up straight for, because that is a sign of a system that is broken. We wanted you to take the harder road. We didn't want you to take the path of least resistance. We wanted you to do big math change, but take the responsibility of closely monitoring and evaluating how ginormous that endeavor was going. Because it slid off into the ditch long before COVID, and we want you to listen to these kids and listen to these parents and teachers.
Thank you, Mrs. Blah. Tracy Taylor.
Hi, my name is Tracy Taylor. Just for a little bit of a background, I was a chemist for 12 years. I now have my clinical doctorate and I am a healthcare professional. But most importantly, I'm a mom of 2 high school students. I'm asking for you to vote on Plan A tonight for middle school and high school students. Some students have been in Wake County schools, not public schools, but Wake County schools since August. Before the vaccine, and there was no increased risk to students and staff and no spread to staff from students. Take a look at the data that I gave to you all, please. On the first page, you'll notice the Wake County cohort stats. On the second page, you'll notice the North Carolina cohort stats. On the third page, you'll notice the South Dakota stats. Do you see a difference? Do you see a difference in the curves? There is none. But the difference is that kids have been in school since August in South Dakota, in Florida, and I could name multiple schools, multiple states across the country. Do the job that you were elected to do. Get our students in schools now. Let's talk about the risks and the benefits of keeping our kids out of schools. Do you think there's any benefit to keeping them out? How many students have died from COVID in Wake County? 0. How many students have died from suicide in Wake County since COVID? 5, at least. Maybe more, but those are the ones that I've heard of as a healthcare professional and a mom. A mental health professional today, pediatric mental health professional, said that she used to see 3 clients per day before COVID. Now she sees 10 per day. 90% of these have active suicidal ideation. Of them, 100% are in remote learning. Mr. Martin said in this meeting and previous meetings, you go on and on about the cases in schools, but the data that we don't have and the data you don't have is the infection rate in schools, which is far lower than what it is in the county and in the state. And we've seen that in different states, in this country. We've seen that in other countries. Vote for Plan A tonight for middle school and high school students. Our kids deserve it.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. And Jeannie Moore?
Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight, Board. Thank you for your work. My name is Jeannie Moore. When my husband and I moved here from Houston, Texas, 19 years ago, one of the many reasons that we selected Raleigh was its excellent public school system. We now have 4 children. 1 has graduated, 2 are in high school, and 1 is in middle school. Let me tell you about my son, Jackson. Jackson is an 11th grader at Leesville Road High School. Jackson has an IEP, and he has made no progress on his IEP goals in the last year. Before school closures, Jackson's goal was to go to NC State School of Business and get a bachelor's degree, and he was on track to make that happen. But in the last year, he has had so much trouble focusing on his virtual classes, and his grades have slipped a lot. Now, my child will be competing for a seat in college against students from other states who have been in in-person school all year, as well as private school students. Colleges are not going to just give Wake County kids a pass on this year's grades. No, more likely our kids are going to get passed over. The fact that my son has not had the benefit of in-person school may very well affect if, when, and where he goes to college. My 9th grader, Charlie, has experienced a huge increase in depression and anxiety due to lockdowns and online school. Despite all our best efforts to get her treatment, she became suicidal in late September. She was hospitalized for 8 days. She's a 9th grader. Imagine what it is like to start high school online in your bedroom. She has missed out on meeting new friends and on so many critical developmental milestones because she's stuck in front of a screen most days. I implore you to make a change. My 4th child is a 6th grader, a brand new middle schooler. This is such a transitional year for kids, going from elementary to middle school. She is a bright child with so much potential. She says that she is not challenged at all by her online classes. My kids are in cohort B. They spent 4 consecutive days inside their school buildings last week. All 3 of them came home with great things to say. They got to speak to their teachers and a few other students. My 9th grader was thrilled to attend her theater class, and my 11th grader got to meet with his IEP counselor for only the 2nd time this year. I ask you, please return our middle and high school students to full-time, in-person learning 5 days a week, starting April 7th, which is the beginning of the 4th quarter. 1 full quarter in school will be a good amount of time for these kids to help turn it around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. And that concludes our public comment speakers this evening. Thank you all again for being here and for sharing with us. Moving on to our information item. The first item on our information agenda is coming from Finance. Again, this is a continuation from the work session of 2021-2022 proposed budget preview. Mr. Needler.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair Sutton, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. If I could ask everyone to go back to the slide deck, which was from Finance Committee. It's now also, I believe, populated on the board meeting agenda. And turn to slide 47. I want to share with you what we're going to share in the coming slides. I want to give you a brief preview of the landscape as we prepare to present the proposed 2021-22 operating budget to you in April. Look at the timeline, give you an overview of the funding categories, take a sneak peek at the multi-year funding initiatives, quick review of some of the potential risks. And before I turn it over to Ms. Kimsey, I want to share one insight that goes back to the CARES presentation you had in the Finance Committee meeting earlier today that Mr. Winters presented. When you see the proposed budget at your next meeting, you will see that we are going to be leaning on some of the CARES funding to support the proposed operating budget exactly as that funding was intended to be used. So I just want to tie those two together for you. And with that, if you could turn to slide 48, and I will ask Ms. Terry Kinsey, our Senior Director of Budget, to run through the slides.
Good evening. The first slide on number 48 is just the budget timeline. The budget has been underway since last fall. The chiefs and their different departments have been pulling together their requests for next year, and for weeks now, the superintendent and her team have been working to balance the superintendent's proposed budget. We plan to bring the superintendent's budget to you on April 6th. At that time, the budget will then have several work sessions to be able to review the budget, ask questions, and if you choose to make changes to that. And then we would submit that version of the budget to the Wake County Commissioners by May 15th. If you'll turn to the next slide. We just want to mention that the budget categories that you see this year will be the same as last year. We have not made any changes to the core structure of the document. So we will have the funding request organized in the same categories that have been used previously. On slide number 50, we wanted to mention the multi-year cases that are in the budget. The first is the non-certified personnel salary increase phase-in. And if you'll notice, we listened to the suggestions you made in one of your previous meetings to extend the multi-year request rather than being over a 5-year time period. We've extended that to a 6-year term, and that will be what you will see in the superintendent's proposed budget. We've looked at the dollars remaining to fund the request and have spread those evenly over the remaining 4 years that we are projecting at this time. The next one is the formula alignment for maintenance and operations, and you'll see a similar change in the years. On slide 52, the school support for social emotional learning also has been extended. On slide 53, the instructional support technicians also has been extended for 4 remaining years. Slide number 54, we wanted to mention some of the potential risk in the budget this year. There has been an effect on student membership and charter school membership due to the pandemic. So the budget will be based on our projected student numbers and the charter school projected student numbers. And then we will see next fall how those come in. That can impact the items that are in the budget. This year, the state of North Carolina held our budget harmless when student numbers for most school districts came in lower than was anticipated. We do not know at this time if the legislature will hold us harmless next year. So that is a potential risk. If we are assuming they will hold us harmless based on student numbers, and if they were to not do that, that would be a change we would need to address. I mentioned charter school students. Also, we have estimated what the state may do for salary increases and employer matching benefit changes to retirement rate and hospitalization insurance. We do not know for certain what will happen, what the legislature will do, but we will have built some increases into the budget based on what's happened historically. I just want to remind you that when we received additional county funds this year of $11.9 million, that was a one-time increase to our budget. Those were dollars that were shifted from the capital area over to the operating budget by Wake County government. So we just need to keep that in mind as we're building next year's budget and considering what requests may go before the county commissioners. We also had $16 million of base budget reductions this year. A lot of those were cost avoidance items because of students not being in school in the fall and other things that came in lower than anticipated. If we are back to all students in school and we're back to a more typical year in terms of that, we may need to restore those base budget reductions. So you may see some of that in the superintendent's proposed budget. There's been an impact on our child nutrition services and transportation this year during some of the times that we did not have as many students eating meals or not riding buses. So there have been efforts this year using some of the CARES funding and COVID funding to address paying those individuals for doing other assignments for supporting our schools. And you'll see some items in the superintendent's proposed budget as we look at those gradually going back to their typical operation. And that's it.
Yeah, and as Ms. Kimsey shared, we will present the superintendent's proposed budget as an information item at the board's April 6th meeting.
All right. Thank you for that preview of the budget. We'll take a few questions now. I'll start with Mrs. Scott. Mr. Eggert, I'll come to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just had a quick question about the non-recurring county appropriation increase that I believe the amount was 16 million.
11.9.
11.9, I'm sorry. And of that, a ballpark, that this was with cost avoidance because of the way we were operating during the pandemic. How much of that, though, that was funded through that would you say would be fixed cost anyway, just moving forward, not based on the number of students? I guess bigger picture, I'm thinking about there are some things that if we do have fewer students, if the state does not continue the hold harmless provision, how much of an impact on these fixed cost parts of operating our schools would you anticipate we'd be having a potential?
Ms. Scott, let me sort of break down your question because I think it's multifaceted, or at least my interpretation is. And the $16 million figure that Ms. Kimsey mentioned, those were current year base budget reductions, permanent base budget reductions that were made to balance the current year budget. And they were made because of the unique situation. I'll run through a few examples. One was a utilities-based budget reduction. Our school setback points were increased and decreased. We had savings in utilities. Once we're back in school full-time, do not anticipate that. We had cuts in the area of transportation. We were not transporting students on a daily basis. We had other cuts that had no impact. For this coming year, you'll see when we present the proposed budget, we're making the assumption we'll be all in beginning in the fall for the entire year, actually beginning in the summer, I should say, for the entire year. So part of our proposed budget will demonstrate a plan for that. As far as, I think, another part of your question, what are our fixed costs versus variable costs, the number of students? Currently, even though we've been operating partially, some students the entire year will be virtual, some have been in cohort rotation. The delta of a few thousand students here or there doesn't have a material, and I'm saying material relative to a $1.7 billion operating budget, impact on our costs. Yes, our formulas change because many of our formulas are student-based, but not material. And 80% of our budget is people. We're a people business. So I think when you see the proposed budget, we can better tease that out. You'll see what our plans are, which we're still finalizing, for making sure that we have what we need to meet the needs of our students, whether it's this many or a little bit more, a little bit less. And there are implications to the hold harmless that we will share with you when we present the budget as well. And just to remind everyone, the budget development process is a very fluid process, and we're making decisions, or at least we're making initial decisions and recommendations based upon very incomplete information. We don't know what the state funding will be. We don't know what our attendance will be. All the other things that Ms. Kimsey covered.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate how difficult that work is, and you do it every year, and this is my goodness, has been quite a year. And thank you for processing my question. I guess daylight savings is getting to me as I struggle to remember what grammar is. So I appreciate that. I guess one of the things I hope we can just continue to educate concerned stakeholders is that there are so many fixed cost involved with operating the school system, regardless of how many students there are, and all of those are extremely important. So I hope we can continue to amplify that. Thank you very much for that explanation.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Mr. Haggerty. Okay. Any other questions regarding the budget preview presentation? All right. Seeing none, thank you for that. And we look forward to receiving the superintendent's budget at our meeting in April.
Great. Thank you.
All right, next agenda item is the second semester updates. I think Superintendent Moore, you will review the updates provided earlier.
Good evening, Chair Sutton, board members. I'm just going to provide a quick recap of the two major items out of our work session today, one shorter, the other one a little longer. The first item is you received information on a Bell schedule review that is long overdue for the board to begin the work of reviewing options that we could implement as a district to try to address concerns and follow some science that's emerging that indicates that teenagers, middle and high school students do better in school if they start later. There are a lot of implications for that for us because of the size of the district and historically how our tiered system has worked. We provided some information about peer districts in North Carolina and other parts of the country that have implemented Bell schedule changes, and we talked at a very high level about a longer-term process over several months to gather stakeholder feedback, continue to examine our current process, model some new options, continue to review what some other districts are doing, maybe explore a little further, and of course, as I mentioned, get stakeholder feedback that would include a large representative groups, including students, staff in schools, parents, and community groups. We have before and after school care providers. There's a lot of folks that we would need to touch base with. So we outlined that process in work session. The second large item in work session really was the return to in-person instruction updates. And we started that presentation, as we always do, by going over the conditions, the guidance, the work, the considerations that we look at and have been looking at since the fall as we make decisions and talk about return to in-person, beginning with state restrictions and guidance that comes from there. And the highlight there was Senate Bill 2020, which allows Plan A in grades 6-12. It was passed unanimously by the General Assembly, signed by the governor, and the backing of North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, State Board of Education, State Superintendent. In looking at state and county data, another consideration, we continue to see that state and local rates are holding steady after meaningful declines after a post-holiday increase. And under district indicators, we reported that our vaccination rates are exceeding expectations with our staff in schools and that secondary transmission rates remain very low on campuses. We then gave an overview of Senate Bill 220 and what was in that bill. The title of the bill is an act to provide access to in-person learning for students in grades kindergarten through 12. The bill requires districts to provide Plan A instruction for grades K-5. Our district has already made plans and implemented fully this week plans for pre-K to 5th grade in-person Plan A. For grades 6-12, it says that local boards of education shall provide in-person instruction under either Plan A, minimal social distancing, or Plan B, 6 feet social distancing, or both, to all students enrolled in grades 6 through 12. The bill requires that all students who have a 504 plan or an IEP plan be provided the opportunity to attend school in Plan A. Gathering that information will begin this week, as we have provided schools with tools to begin that process to contact all families to determine their preference. In addition, staff has made a recommendation for board consideration to move in-person students from Plan B to Plan A. All students in Plan B to Plan A. In addition to the considerations mentioned earlier, there is growing consensus from health officials at both the national and state level. The effects on children when not in person now outweigh the diminishing health risks of COVID-19. In our collaboration with the ABC Science Collaborative, they have indicated that, and I quote, "Far and away, the factor that most strongly predicts success in Plan A is success in Plan B. Thus far, WCPSS has been successful in Plan B." The governor, North Carolina DHHS, State Board of Education have provided a pathway and guidance to safely implement Plan A in grades 6-12. We acknowledge that educators are concerned about moving to Plan A. This will be another pivot and a significant shift. But there is also energy among educators that students will benefit from more in-person instruction. We acknowledge that many parents are advocating for Plan A, and that other parents may request a virtual academy if schools move to Plan A. The staff recommendation is made with the understanding that a full quarter of in-person instruction is of tremendous benefit and can be implemented safely. And we look forward to discussing this further at a special called board meeting next Monday on the 22nd. Thank you.
All right, Superintendent Moore, thank you for those updates, particularly regarding second semester. All right, at this time, if I could entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, second from Mr. Hegarty, to approve tonight's consent agenda as it is posted. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, tonight's consent agenda is approved. Moving to our action agenda. There are a couple of items here. The first, a couple of policies. First one being Board Policy 6200, goals of the Child Nutrition Services Department on its first reading.
I'm not Paula DeLuca, but I am here in her place. She was called to add a conflict this evening. Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board, I'm here to present to you the first reading of Policy 6200, Goals of Child Nutrition Services. Board Policy 6200, Goals of Child Nutrition Services, is a new policy. The policy was created by the North Carolina School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual. It is part of the Policy Migration Project. When given final board approval, it will replace current Policy 7000, Child Nutrition Services. It was reviewed at the February 23rd, 2021 Policy Committee meeting. Tonight, we request the board's approval on first reading of Policy 6200, Goals of Child Nutrition Services.
Chair
Ms.
Sutton.
Kushner.
Thank you. Chair Sutton, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Policy 6200, Goals of Child Nutrition Services for first reading.
Got a motion from Mrs. Kushner, second from Dr. Martin to approve Board Policy 6200, Goals of Child Nutrition Services on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, that motion is approved on its first reading.
I'm also here to present to you first reading of Policy 6210, Organization of Child Nutrition Services. Board Policy 6210, Organization of Child Nutrition Services, is a new policy. The policy was created, again, by the North Carolina School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual. It is part of the Policy Migration Project. When given final board approval, it will replace current policies 7010, Child Nutrition Services Responsibilities, and 7030, Child Nutrition Services Program Responsibilities. It also was reviewed at the February 23rd, 2021 Policy Committee meeting. We request the board's approval of first reading of Policy 6210, Organization of Child Nutrition Services.
Ms. Kushner.
Thank you. Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we approve Organization of Child Nutrition Services Policy 6210 for first reading. And again, both this and the previous policy are going to help with the migration for us to update these policies more effectively going forward. Thank you, sir.
Second.
Again, a motion from Mrs. Kushner, second from Dr. Martin to approve Board Policy 6210, Organization of Child Nutrition Services on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, Board Policy 6210 is approved on its first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda, a couple of items from our chief of schools. The first one is on or approval of the long-range capping recommendations. These were presented to us, I think, at our last meeting and up for approval tonight. Staff is requesting approval of tonight's meeting.
Good evening,
Mr.
Chair.
Martin.
Good evening, Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and board members. Staff is seeking approval of the capping recommendations, specifically for Northwoods Elementary School, Apex Friendship Middle School, and Apex Friendship High School, as well as maintaining all current capped schools. The recommendation would be for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year and for the 2021-22 school year. The capping recommendations, as you mentioned, Chair Sutton, were presented during the board work session on March 2nd. Staff's recommendations are based on several factors that include board feedback, principal feedback, a review of base student percentages, projected growth, and school capacities. Staff will continue to carefully monitor the impact on our overflow schools, and I would note that the backup document, the 2021 CAP School Revised, contains relevant data to support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. And if I can entertain a motion to approve the long-range capping recommendations coming from staff this evening.
Chair Sutton, I'll make a motion to approve the capping recommendations.
Got a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, a second from Mrs. Carter to approve the recommendations on long-range capping that have just been identified by staff. Is there any discussion? Ms. Mahaffey.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. We all know the impact of capping that capping has on our new families. I know there's a lot of work done at the school level to help inform newly enrolled folks coming, whether they are in or out of the cap. I'm curious, as the communication policy, as these recommendations are approved, what folks can expect from the school about communication, or how we communicate, where we can find information about capping.
Sure.
And what that experience is like for a family.
Sure. My team, as well as our communications team, will be working with each of our CAP schools to be sure that there is the appropriate information that's shared directly on their website. We work with each of the school principals as well as the data managers to begin that process of communicating with families as they do come in to enroll regarding if they have reached their cap limit, what that wait list process looks like. The school really becomes the main hub of that communication with families to monitor that process. They handle the callbacks and much of that communication with families.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I know we have people watching who may be wondering what that process looks like, and I appreciate you taking time to draw that out. And big thank you to our data managers for handling that,
Yes.
because it is a big lift for them.
All right, is there any further discussion regarding the long-range capping recommendations? Seeing none, all those in favor show by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it, those recommendations are approved. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
The next item, the 2021-2022 instructional calendars for our early colleges. Mr. Martin.
Thank you again, Chair Sutton. Staff is seeking approval of the proposed 2021-22 instructional calendars for Knightdale High School, as well as our Wake County early colleges. The draft calendars were reviewed with the board during the work session on March 2nd. The proposed 2021-22 instructional calendars each contain 177 student days and at least 1,025 instructional hours. They also meet all other requirements of the current calendar law. So we request approval at this time.
Motion to approve the calendars as recommended.
All right, I got a motion from Dr. Martin, second from Mr. Hegarty, to approve staff's request for the 2021-2022 instruction calendars for Knightdale High School and our early colleges. Is there any discussion? Dr. Martin.
Just a brief comment. I think it's appropriate to always remind people when we approve these calendars, that they're approved on a very different schedule than our regular calendars, why we're approving a calendar only for next year now. And that's because these are all the early colleges that have to interface with other institutions. So I think it's just appropriate to remind the public that the reason for what we're doing right now is to make sure that we've got the calendars aligned with these other institutions. Thank you.
Mrs. Scott.
Thank you. And I appreciate the clarification Dr. Martin just made for why these do happen late, but I also just, again, wanted to express my gratitude that we are able to offer these schools at all. The partnerships with the universities, the type of specific training, and also just the learning environment is such a unique learning environment for students. I'm so proud of these schools and so thankful for the relationship that we have with Wake Tech and with the other institutions in surrounding areas, and for all of the volunteers and businesses that also work to help provide our students with a fantastic experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor show by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the 2021-2022 instruction calendars for Knightdale High School and the early colleges have been approved.
Thank you so much, and it's great to see you all in person this evening.
Thank you, sir. Great to see you. All right, if I could entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11, A1, A3, and A6, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11, A3, and to consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G.
Second.
Got a motion from Ms. Mahaffey, second from Mrs. Scott to go into closed session per the items stated and that are listed on our agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We now stand in closed session. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and we appreciate the attention, and good night.